Have you ever considered how much your voice truly impacts how people perceive you, your communication skills, and your confidence? I've recently taken some voice acting lessons and I'm taking another communication course, which all kind of wraps up into your voice and how we communicate and how much it really does impact all of the things that people think about you and what you think about yourself. So I've invited a special guest. Estelle Idoko is the podcast host of Sing Confidently, Live Creatively. She is a voice coach and she works with performers and artists who are on stage and really need help finding their voice. But I really think this is going to be helpful for you too. If you want to know how to build your confidence through your voice, this is the podcast for you. Help me welcome my special guest, Estelle Idoko. Estelle is one of the best. She has a great podcast. If you're considering all the fun things, especially if you're a performer or if you have something that you want to do that requires getting on stage, or even if it's not on stage, but you're a performer, Estelle is your girl. So Estelle, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and let's get going.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather, for having me on. I'm really excited to be on and be chatting with you all about confidence and singing and how they correlate and how, creativity and singing confidence all overlap. So, I myself am a singer and a voice teacher, as well as a podcast host of the Sing Confidently, Live Creatively podcast, like you said. I'm based in North Carolina and I teach freelance voice teacher. So I teach in different studios in person and online. And then I also teach privately in my own private studio and have a course as well for singers. And I just love helping other artists, other aspiring performers and singers develop their voice and build confidence in themselves as singers because I myself grew up in the arts. Like I grew up doing, like I was that girl, like doing choir in church, choir in school, multiple choirs in school, theater, auditioning for, not even just theater in school, but also doing like local talent competitions, just all the things like doing modeling, doing acting, doing singing, taking dance classes. I was a cheerleader in high school. Like I just loved performing. I loved being out there, being on stage and showing up and telling stories, whether that was through singing in a choir or, singing or performing in a play, whatever it was. I just love telling stories, using movement, whatever. And so I grew up loving the arts, passionately loving the arts. However, when I was transitioning to like college and like my adult life, I just had always heard these messages that, even though the arts are great, like they're beautiful and wonderful and they're great, way to worship God, in the church and all of that. But, you want to keep that to the side. It's kind of like a side thing because you need to like pursue, a real career, a stable career. And I'm the daughter of immigrants, Nigerian immigrants, and I love my upbringing. I really, really loved my upbringing. I grew up in a church that was like primarily West African, primarily Nigerian. And so I really appreciated that culture and having that heritage. But I do know that, and it's not only in West African culture, and it's an immigrant culture in general, and it's in even Western culture, just this idea that like there are certain careers that are more admirable than the arts. And anything in the arts is like, okay, that's like cute, but like put it to the side. And so for me, all of my love for singing, all of my love for using my voice and telling stories, it was like, that's nice, but it's not a real avenue to pursue, and so you kind of got to put to the side. So I was like, okay, so I loved people. I knew I loved interacting with people, helping people. I wanted to help people, so I studied psychology. I was pre-med and I thought that was going to be the path, and I would just like do creativity on the side. I also loved fashion, so I was like style blogging in college, and I was like a voice minor as well. Like I was just doing all the creative things, but like that wasn't what I was actually doing for school. So I was kind of all over the place. But I kept feeling like I just wasn't settled in this career path of like psychology and medicine, even though I loved psychology. And I now know how it really correlates to voice in so many ways. I can get to that later, but I just didn't, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I was really struggled with that and like prayed over that. And it actually helped draw me closer to God because I had to really depend on him to guide my path. and to reveal what he was calling me to do, not just what people had said I should do or what I thought I should do, but what was God calling me to do. And so, long story short, I did end up like going, I graduated right before COVID. I did end up going to med school for a time, but God turned me around and was like, I have called you towards something completely different. I've called you to be an artist. I've called you to help other people uncover their creative dreams as well. And what happened was I left med school, decided that I wanted to pursue a career in the performing arts, but like leaving med school, even before med school, like I was like starting to, I was wanting to start expressing myself more and seeing more. And I just like started putting myself out there. And then I got into med school and it was like that was pushed to the side. And then
Right.
I left med school and now all the shame of transitioning my career and all that was like gnawing at me. And at the same time, I was like, I want to go for auditions. I want to start taking dance classes. And I got connected with a coach, a creativity coach, who started working with me on like overcoming that shame and overcoming those limiting beliefs so that I could pursue this dream of being a performer and even teaching voice to other people. So it took a lot of time, but what happened over the next couple of years was that I started taking small steps of action every single day. I started practicing my voice, like taking voice lessons and practicing on my own even more. I started going on auditions and taking dance classes. Again, just little steps every day
Yeah.
while I was still working and, staying at home, saving money and like had that privilege. But like, it was just little steps every single day of like, how can I do this thing that I want to do and work towards like what I know God has called me to do, even though I'm still struggling with a lot of shame and like guilt around like changing my career path. And like, that was all going on, but I knew that there was something more that I was working towards. And so taking those small steps of action, practicing, putting in the work, getting help and support from coaches. And also I started pursuing like an online certificate in voice technique. And then eventually I started applying for a grad school for music school. And eventually got in. And so that's like the whole journey to where I am now, where now I am teaching voice and, building this business and also still performing and working on performing more and really monetizing performing even more than because I was so focused on teaching and the aspect of learning how to teach others. So now I'm like, okay, I want to still be a performer. So yeah, but now that was a long story, but now I really, really just love helping people go through that same process that I realized I'd been doing my whole life, but I
Mm.
had to do it again after I left medical school of like building confidence. I believe like the steps that I take students through in my course and that I talk about on my podcast, like I believe I had gone through it my whole life as a singer, and
Right.
I believe a lot of us do, but we don't do it as intentionally. And I want to help people like intentionally build confidence in themselves as performers, as singers. And even if you're not wanting to do like performing full time, but you want to feel more confident in general, exploring a creative outlet is such a beautiful way to build that confidence in yourself. So
Oh,
that's what I love to talk about now.
yay, I love it. Well,
Yeah.
obviously, me too.
Yeah.
Confidence I was listening to your story and I was thinking, yep, was singing in church, was playing in the band in church,
Yeah.
was, all the things, and you
Yeah.
forget
Check,
about all
check,
those
check.
things.
Yeah.
Was acting in school. And I also played sports, basketball, and
I tried, but I just had to go to cheerleading. I was like, yeah, you guys can. I was
I
like,
was a
I'll be
cheerleader.
dancing on the side.
I was
I'll
a
be your
cheerleader.
enthusiastic.
Yes, I was a cheerleader in middle school,
Yeah, there you go.
but then I just went into the sports thing, and I was in
That's
business like
good.
DECA and all of that
Oh,
too.
wow. You're well rounded.
But it was interesting because I was listening to you and I thought, oh wow, I've been doing it my whole life too. I mean,
Mm,
not thinking about it, right? But I have always been
mm,
involved in I taught Sunday school to the younger kids and we did
yeah.
crafts and stuff like that. Always did vacation Bible school,
Yeah, same.
traveled to Washington, D.C. and was teaching. I mean, yeah. So anyway, it's crazy how the artist in us is always there, I guess.
Yeah.
In different facets because I laugh, and this is completely off topic. Sorry to all of you listening, but I actually played flute. I was first chair for a little bit of
Wow.
a time, but I can't read sheet music anymore. It's been that long.
Oh.
I've lost that talent. I say I've lost. I just need to
Yeah,
like
you
get
could
back to
swoop in
it.
it
But it's
again.
funny because I have my flute still, haven't played it in 30
Mm,
years. But anyway, or 20 something years. So anyway, I love your story. I think that's fascinating. That we all have a background, but I want to go back to one thing that you said that about medical school and about the
mm,
shame there. And then I want you to, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. But that I think is a very common experience for people to have not them have an expectation of themselves, but the expectation you had of yourself was a borrowed expectation from your parents
mm.
or culture. And it is so common that people are told that they have to go somewhere that makes money or maybe more respected in certain areas. I do want to kind of ask you, do you think now it's a little bit more acceptable because there are more ways to make money doing what you're doing versus even 10 or 15 years ago because of social
Yeah.
media and the ability to, for the average person to connect with so many people? Do you think that's made a difference?
I do, but it might be just because of I might be biased though.
Yeah,
I think I do, but I might be biased because I'm now surrounded more by other artists who I see doing the work and I see them doing this and I'm like, okay, like it's definitely possible. And like I have been able to like cultivate like podcasts and people that I follow who are doing this work and like
right.
so I'm like, oh, like it's definitely like I feel like it's more acceptable and I tell people what I'm doing and like I'm getting less and less like clapback, I guess, or like I'm getting fewer people
Pushback.
who are like, yeah, pushing back and like being like, huh? But it still doesn't happen. So I don't know if it's my perspective because I'm older now and I like maybe just ignore like I don't take it to heart if anyone maybe reacts negatively to me saying like, oh, I'm a voice teacher and I'm a performer and like, oh, okay. Like people are like, oh, that's so cool, you know? But and I think also like but I do think that there's still some resistance there. So I don't know. I think it is in some circles probably more acceptable, but I still think that there's still work to be done of like allowing people that freedom from
Hmm.
feeling like they have to pick a certain career. I do think it's better. Like there are more options for sure, and there are more opportunities for different types of careers. But I do think when it comes to the creative space and the arts and entertainment industry, I especially in Christian circles, I still think there's still work to be done of like,
Right.
no, this is possible and you could do this and you can also glorify God with this career and you can also
Yes.
still like I believe there's a way that you can find a way to make money and do this sustainably. I'm still in the journey of doing that and learning that, but I do believe that it's possible because I see it more and I've
Right.
surrounded myself with people who believe it. But it might be my bias. I don't know for sure, honestly. I
I like
don't.
that answer. I mean, here's the great thing is that there's improvement, right? Improvement is
Yeah.
always
I
going in
think
that
overall
direction.
it's getting more. There's more.
Right. I love that. And one of the reasons I even asked that question was I think so many people, at least, you know, I find that so many people will come to me wanting to do something and they believe it's not
Mm,
acceptable or
yeah.
it's I deal with a lot of people who are kind of on the other side. I'm in my 50s. So I have people who are on the other side of life, their children are grown or whatever, and they want to do something new, but it's not acceptable. It was the thing that was
Mm,
not, it was frowned upon. So I love that you brought that up because I think that's very important for people to know that you can kind of move beyond it. I like that you
yeah.
mentioned that it is work because it does take work, both for your own mindset, and then for the mindset of those who uh,
Yes.
have to
1000%. You have to
go
be
for it.
intentional. Take a
Yes.
lot of intention internally and then also like who you surround yourself with, finding examples around you. I mean, I don't know if you ever heard of Kim Hale.
Mhm.
She's like a dancer. She's in her sixth, seventh. She's like older, but she's a dancer and she's like created this like whole platform online. I think she did it like mainly build it a lot during like on TikTok during like COVID of
Right.
like her really like going all in her dance career. And she's like in her I want to say 70. 70s,
Which is a beautiful age.
like, which is beautiful, but she's like, and she's like had this whole like life, but like she's like, I'm still doing this, I'm pursuing this. And it's like, wow, like it doesn't
Mhm.
matter, your age doesn't matter. And there have
No.
been people who have, who she'll talk about like, you know, being rejected and like people like thinking like, oh, like what are you doing? Thinking she's crazy. But like it's so impactful how she shares her story and she just keeps going and she shares the journey. Like she brings you along with the journey, brings you along with her on the journey. And you're like, wow, anything is possible.
Yes.
And like this is what it looks like to not let those thoughts hold you back, no matter the age. So yeah, I
I
just want
think that that is
yeah.
actually magical. And I think if people could learn one thing,
Mm,
that if you have something that's on your heart,
mm.
especially if it's something God's placed on your heart, that you pursuing something, even if it's something that seems small to you, there are always people who are going to be naysayers, but they aren't the people you're supposed to be impacting. Or maybe, here's a new thought, maybe they are, because if you do it anyway and they
Yeah.
see it, then maybe that's the magic.
Yeah.
So when you coach people with um, or with their voice or how to sing, how does that impact their confidence? How does that tie in helping them build confidence?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said this. It's just so beautiful because I think about my own voice lesson experiences, especially coming out of med school. My voice teacher she was about to go to her master's program and she was still in the beginning of like her teaching journey. And yet she was just able to be there for me to like help me believe in my voice even though like I was like I know I can sing. I'm I believe God has called me to this path, and yet I still have all this shame and all these guilt stories of like leaving med school. And so I feel like it was affecting like even my thinking about my voice of like every now and then I'd be like, can I actually sing, because I switched my whole career for this, so I better be able to sing, like this better work. But she would just be there being that support for me. And it wasn't like she would pretend like she was like the best teacher in the world, or she was a really great teacher actually. But and she gave me a lot of insight into teaching, but she was just there to help remind me that you can do this. These are the things that I'm noticing in your voice that are really great. And she affirmed those things. And then the things that we both realized I needed to work on, she helped me work through those things. And that whole journey, that whole process was alongside other coaching that I was getting, like really, really important and fundamental to my overall confidence, as well as my confidence in my voice. And so I say that as an example because, you know, your teachers guide how you teach for sure. And the way that I teach now is I teach students who are young. I teach students like in my own private studio. I have like much older students. And I've also had like a lot of younger students and teen students in the studios that I teach. And it doesn't matter the age, it's the same idea of helping them hear themselves sing, first of all, like listen to your own voice, learn to listen to your own voice and notice what is good about my voice. What do I like? What did I enjoy? Even if it's one small thing, what did I enjoy? What did I like? And then we can think about what are some things. Let's just start with one or two things that we can start to work on, that we can tweak, that maybe isn't feeling so great. And not even just like you don't like how it hears. What is actually behind that? Does it not feel great? Is there tension on that note? Does it feel it's too high, it's out of your reach? And is that just a thought, or is that just is that something that is actually realistic, or is that just something that you're thinking? Because 9 times out of 10, it's just what you think. You can actually reach the note. We're going to work on that. But so it's that idea of helping them listen to their voice and affirm the things that are going well, the things that are
Right.
working that they don't even notice because they're so like in their heads about like, I don't even know if I can do this. I can't really sing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying blah, 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 like to push that aside. That's valid. That's really, really valid. We're going to get to that. But first, I want you to notice the things that are going well for you. I'm going to affirm that for you. We're going to lean into that. And then we're also not even, and then at the same time, we're also going to notice the things that, oh, let's work on this. Not only because you want to sound this way, but because you want to feel better when you're singing. When you feel good when you're singing, you're going to want to sing more. And that wanting to sing more is going to help you to practice more, which is what you need to get better. So it's like it all ties in.
Absolutely.
But that's what I found like um in like from day one of a voice lesson, you're going to sing, we're going to notice what do we like and then what do we want to start working on. It's very simple and it's like it seems kind of obvious, but we don't really do this
Right.
when
But
we're
if you're
first
not a
starting to
singer,
sing.
right?
Yeah,
Because
like you
someone
have
who
to
isn't, yeah.
that's where we start with actually listening to your voice. Don't just not
Yeah.
just sing but listen to your voice and notice what we want to affirm and what we want to tweak a little bit. So that's kind of like where I like to start. And yeah, that's how we get to our true sounds as singers. So yeah.
I like that you start with what you like because so often
Hmm.
we are focused, hyper
Yep.
focused on what we don't like.
Yep.
And it's hard to build confidence if you're only focused on what you don't like because every one of us has beautiful things about our voice, and every one of us has not so beautiful things about your voice.
Yep.
And if you become a podcaster, you will be rudely shoved into that. I mean, I will say that if you want to listen to your voice without anybody around, just download Audacity and record
Yeah.
yourself a few times. And my first time I recorded, it took me almost 9 hours because I kept editing and these little ticks that I have or whatever. So I can imagine that if somebody's trying to sing in front of you, because I was behind a desk with nobody around, somebody trying to sing in front of you, it's a little unnerving when you're
Mhm.
singing in front of someone,
Yeah.
right?
And I honor that. I always tell students after the first lesson, thank you for singing for me. Because I know we literally just met, usually like we just met usually, and you just sang for a stranger. Like you should feel so proud of yourself, even if it was
Yes.
just like a verse and a chorus of a song. Like, thank you for singing for me because that's very vulnerable, you know?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, so I think that singing, I'm intimidated by that, but even though I've been in front of people singing before when I was younger, it's ironic that you said, "Is my voice even good?" And I think, "Oh my goodness, I used to get up and sing solos, mind
Yeah.
you, at church." And I'm like, what? Why don't I do that anymore? So anyway, I'm not interested really in doing that, but in my mind, I'm asking myself, why am I not interested? So tell me, what kind of people come to you for coaching? Because I would imagine they're all not performers. So what other type of person might come to you for
Yeah.
some coaching?
Yeah. So like for it depends on depending on the studio. So different, yeah, exactly. Not everyone is necessarily wanting to perform professionally, right? So some people are like they're like kids, like maybe their kids are wanting to audition for local theater, or like a local community theater show, or like a choir or something, school choir. So it's like and something is happening. Like there's an acute issue, there's an acute thing that's going on upcoming, and they want to help them, prepare for that. And then they want them to like continue to develop after that so that they can like sustain themselves vocally, in the choir or whatever. And so that's kind of how it starts a lot of times with younger students. Like a lot of times it's kids and they're like, oh, they want them to get into this choir. They want them to go to this audition. Or like if it's an older student, um, like I had a student who was about to go to college and wasn't even going to study music or anything, just like used to love singing. Like when they were in I guess like middle school, high school, like earlier in high school, used to love singing and then something had taken them away from it and they just felt like they like this person did not feel confident in her voice like singing like at all, right? And had lost so much of it because of the lack of like doing it. Really, really just the lack of doing it and just didn't feel like they could hit the notes and all that stuff. And so that's one thing. I had an older student who just like again used to sing. A lot of the time it's like used to sing, wants to come back to it, doesn't necessarily want to do it for performances or anything, or like for like a career, but just wants to be able to like sing in karaoke or sing at local open mic night, like just wants to feel comfortable in their voice and feel like they can do it. It's like almost like just wanting to know that they can if they do have the chance to, and not feeling like they're constantly holding themselves back. So that's how it usually is for older students. And then for younger students, it's like their parents want them to like start developing that, and they want them to start developing that skill, which I think is amazing because it's going to help them develop confidence as well, especially if they are middle school, high school, because that's when the voice is changing. And that's where a lot of people lose confidence in their voice, is in middle school and high school, because the teacher, someone says something about your voice cracking, and it's like
Yeah.
no one explains that this is completely normal. Your voice is doing what it's supposed to do. It's growing. Your vocal cords are developing. That's amazing.
Yes.
And a lot of times teachers, and I understand why, because there's a lot going on. If you're teaching a group, a choir, music directing a show, like you don't have time to focus on every individual student, but we have to really encourage students that it's okay when your voice cracks. It's normal, but so that's why I love it when people do come in when they're younger, or like in that middle school, high school range, and their voice is changing, or under 20, under 25, and your voice is still developing really until like your mid 20s. And so, that's
Is that something
Mhm.
that when you work with people
Yeah.
or I should say students or that age
Yeah.
and they have their voices cracking or their voices changing,
Mm.
can it develop their voice into a different voice than what it would be if they didn't, how does that work? I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah. So I took a voice class last semester in my program, and we were looking into this, like the voice, the changing voice for male voices, for female voices, and all that. And yeah, so it's a very critical part in our vocal development and our confidence development as singers, and future adults, is like being able to work through your voice, like all the way through your voice. Because what happens is that sometimes you just get stuck in like the lower part of your voice,
mm,
especially female singers. You get placed in like the alto section in choir, and you're like, okay, you sing alto. And then you think the rest of your life that you can't sing high notes. And it's just not true.
uh,
You never worked you never worked those notes before. You didn't do register blending exercises and explore your head voice. And because of that lack of developing the head voice and those higher notes, we can't blend the head voice and the chest voice, and find a solid middle voice. And that's the really hard part for students at that age. So it's not that you can't come back to it later. You absolutely can. Definitely
yeah.
can. You just have
Okay.
to you just have to start training again. But it's a really critical point where, if you do work through that at that time, and you do continue to sing in your entire voice, even though there are going to be cracks and all that stuff, but you learn to smooth over that break between your middle voice, your chest voice, and your head voice. If you learn to work through that, it will be better on the other side, because you'll be able to keep singing without holding yourself back from hitting certain notes, if that makes sense.
Right.
You'll be able to use your entire voice.
Right.
So yeah, rather than like
It's
staying stuck in one section. Yeah.
It's interesting because first of all, let me just say, when I did this, husband and I are doing a communication class. It's not a voice
Yeah.
class, it's a communication class. But he did have a section on voice. And
Mm.
I liked the way he said, your voice is like a piano. You have 88 keys. Most of us choose about 5 keys, and that's where we stay. And he's like, most people just don't practice the other keys. That's all it
Yeah.
is. And he said it's an instrument. When you play an instrument, you want to play all the instrument, not just part of it, right? And he's
Yeah.
like, when you start using it, and that fascinated me because I thought, I have never, ever in my entire life, I'm a communication major, my degree is in communication. Um, I've never considered my voice as an instrument or a tool, but when I heard that, I thought, oh my goodness, your voice is literally everything because that's how people relate to you. That's how you
Yeah.
communicate to other people. I've always looked at it from a communication standpoint of like interpretation. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you this too, and of course you know this, but when I was in my speech comm class, and again, 25 something years ago, I I live in Texas and I had a very strong Southern drawl. And my speech teacher told me, if you do not get rid of your Southern drawl, you will always be looked at as less intelligent.
Hmm.
And I was like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, nope, you cannot. so when I hang out with family or when I hang out with my friends that are, have that Southern drawl, I will pick it up and I'll catch it in myself. But it was fascinating to me because I had never even considered that people will consider your voice with your intelligence or with anything else. So do you ever coach people who are just, say, somebody who is like maybe a president or someone who isn't performing, but
Mm.
maybe speaks in front of big groups, like at work or something like that? Is that something you would do?
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity to, but I find that so fascinating because it is so, sometimes it's something that we so often don't, we minimize like how relevant our voice is, and being able to use your voice well and utilize your voice and speak in a way that truly expresses who you are, whether like sing, speak, it doesn't matter. Singing is just speaking on pitch. Okay, singing is just speaking, but you're intentionally using a pitch, and you're adding some, you're connecting the notes, right? You're connecting the pitches. That's it.
Right. Okay.
It is
Ah,
still, it's the
love
same,
that.
it's
So
still
much
using the,
simple.
and yeah, there's different, breathing techniques and all that, of course, for sure. But it's still using breath, it's still using, your vocal cords. It's all the same. So however you're communicating, the ability to use your voice and not minimize the fact that your voice is relevant is so important. And I think that even though I haven't worked with like anyone who's like strictly a speaker and they're just wanting to develop their voice for speaking, I do think that's so fascinating. I do work with like singers who are also actors, so I think like that is also something that translates to
Parallel.
actors.
Sure.
Yeah, for like a parallel. And the idea is, can you communicate what your character is through this song? Can you communicate what your character is wanting to say through this monologue? If you have a speech that you're preparing, you're talking to, your clients, you're talking to people in your community, you're talking to you're coaching someone or you're coaching a group, can you communicate clearly who you are, what you believe, what you're trying to get across to them in a way that they will truly understand, and in a way that they'll truly be moved by? Because a lot of times I'm like
Mm,
working with actors and singers, we want to move the audience, we want to move
right.
people who are listening, regardless of what you're doing. Whether and my husband is in academia, so sometimes we talk about this too,
Oh,
because if he has like a presentation or something, he'll, I'll be like, oh, do it for me. Let me,
yeah.
coach
See,
you.
you coach him. You coach those people.
Yeah,
What are
yes,
you
that's
talking
true.
about?
But like, so even if you have like a presentation, you might be, you might be reading off of slides, and no, especially in this day and age with our short attention spans, we can't just be reading off of slides and just draw, like keep going. You have to have your points. You have to know what you're saying, why you're saying it, and why does it matter for the people who are hearing you.
Hmm.
Same thing that singers have to think about, same thing that actors have to think about. Why is your character saying this? Why does it matter in this scene? Same thing that speaker, anyone who's speaking, you need to think about this. And then you need to think about, how is my voice going to portray it? Am I going to get a little bit louder when I'm speaking about this point because I want you to know that this matters? Am I going to soften up a little bit because I want you to really lean in and hear
Mm.
me? So these are things that like, and that's like, oh, that's
Oh,
crescendo and decrescendo in
I love
musical
it.
terms, but it's, we apply it to any way that we use our voice. So don't minimize how important your voice is, and don't be afraid to explore it a little bit more, even if it's through a creative way like singing, so that you can learn to express it in other areas of your life,
Right.
So,
Well, I could geek out on all of this because all of that is so fascinating to me because I
yeah.
don't think about we just don't think about that in daily lives. But even in
Mm.
podcasting, I had someone
Yes.
audit my podcast and she was fabulous. She's a coach and she's like, "Girl, stop reading from a script."
Mm.
And I thought, there's no way people know I'm reading. I wasn't reading verbatim, but I was reading enough where, I was losing my pitch and all the things were kind of, like you said, monotone, growing into each other. And I thought to myself after I evaluated what all her feedback, and I thought, oh wow, I should know this. But we do so much in our lives that we don't consider our voice being important or recognize how important it is and what we need to communicate. So that tip that you said, thinking about what you're trying to communicate and why it's important for the audience, whatever that audience is, to hear. So it would be relating to like a manager or someone who has to speak, even to if you have a child who's graduating and you're giving a speech to your family, something like that. It's important. Your voice is important. How you communicate is important. So I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of bring it back to what other than the technical pieces of your voice, what other qualities do you think are important for to your voice and all of that to be important for confidence building?
That's a really good question. So other than like obviously like, working on your voice, like qualities like character of the person, is that what you mean?
Right, and just the what is essential
Hmm.
for your voice, what would be essential for building your confidence from your
Right.
standpoint as a voice coach, as a person who
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So for me, I teach this in my course as well, like the idea of starting with knowing your voice. So that's kind of what we talked about, like knowing like how does your voice sound, listening to your voice, etc. Knowing vocal anatomy, like basic idea is can be helpful. And then from there, practicing. So I like good practice. And and this goes for anyone who has like a speech coming up, you have something that you are preparing for, especially if you do with like performance anxiety or like any sort of stage fright, which you and I have talked about before on my podcast.
Yes.
And you mentioned something that is really, really, really fascinating. And that is the idea of, and you can do this in your practice time, which I recommend anyone who wants to explore singing to just like, you don't necessarily have to get a coach immediately. Like, just start to practice on your own, start to sing on your own. And in your voice practice, prepare for whatever it is that you want to be doing. So if you want to be singing on stage, like when you want to do a karaoke night, you want to sing with some friends, it can be as small as that. Or if you are wanting to practice a speech for something, right? What you talked about, Heather, is thinking about what are the feelings that you get when you are like
Hmm.
about to put yourself out there, maybe on stage or like you're about to speak online, like even if you're posting on social media, right?
Right.
Stage fright, that's the same stage fright. We can so those same stressful feelings we can experience. Think about what those are, and then see if you can find a way to experience that, but like in a safer place, right? So that's called
Right.
stress inoculation is what it's called, of like, or anxiety inoculation, where you like actually think about those triggers, like those things, those emotions that you experience in that stressful moment, and actually kind of set it up so that you can maybe experience that even during your practice time. So you already are anticipating that feeling that you're going to have.
Right.
Also think about I guess like kind of mirroring exactly what you would do before a performance or
Right.
before you are going to go on to speak. So in your practice time, as you're practicing your presentation, don't just practice it sitting down, like or like lying in bed or whatever. Like, stand up, maybe even like get dressed up as if you're doing it that day, and do what you
Oh,
would
I love
do
that. Yeah.
even before you go to speak and do your presentation, even before you log on to that, look in the mirror and watch yourself, right? That's like one of the first things that you see a lot of voice teachers do with like younger students, is like get them in front of a mirror to see what their posture actually looks like, because sometimes we think that we're standing up straight and we're not, right? Get them in front of a mirror to see how their breathing is, are they relaxed, and all that stuff. Yeah, stress inoculation. So thinking about those feelings that you will feel when you get stressed and when you're about to perform and you're about to get on stage or you're about to log into the Zoom, and see if you can maybe mirror that in a smaller way during your practice session. So, and then like structure your practice session to look like a performance in and of itself, of like actually how you would realistically do that performance or that presentation. And so that's all part of practice time, right? It's
Right.
Practice is like the thing that no one who uses their voice, I feel like a lot of people who use their voice in one way or another, whether speaking or singing, a lot of times don't really practice. And it's so funny
Right.
because I think it's because we feel like our voice it's internal, like we got it, we're good. Or maybe it's nerve-wracking to like practice on your own and just have your own voice that you're hearing. Practice is so important. That's how you develop over time. And that's how you notice what's going well in your voice and what's feeling off.
So you're bringing up practice. So I want to bring up something, and we haven't talked about this yet. So if you don't want
Mhm.
to go here, please tell me no.
It's okay.
But one of the things that is a new thing for me to hear
Yeah.
about, or at least new to my, to my vision, is
Hmm.
that it's really important if you have something big coming up, or even just speaking in front of people, or even a podcast, that you should be warming up your voice and your,
Yeah.
and I was like, what do you mean? I talk all the time. Like, doesn't that matter? So can you talk to that a little bit? Just out of something
Yes.
random and fun, but
Oh my gosh, Heather, you are speaking my love language. I love vocal warm-ups. Anyone who listens to my podcast or like even follows me on Instagram, I'm like always doing a vocal warm-up.
oh,
And
how
people like
funny.
who I sing in church choir. I'm taking a break from church choir actually right now, but in like church choir, every time I come to rehearsal, they already know like this girl's gonna do a warm-up or she's gonna lead us through a warm-up if she's the one leading the practice. So like I just love a good vocal warm-up because I used to not like warm-ups and low-key I still don't really like them because they're kind of like a thing you have to do. But it's because I always felt like they were boring.
Right.
But they don't have to be boring and they're so helpful for your voice. And when I begin to intentionally warm up my voice, again, that period after medical school, especially, I did it before medical school too, but even after medical school, but I was like, oh, I'm pursuing this for real, for real. I need to be warming up my voice every single day if I really want to be intentional about using my voice. If you're a business leader, you're someone who is wanting to be in the podcasting space, or you just want to have a creative outlet in singing and you want to be intentional about it, be intentional about preparing your voice to do the work that you're going to make it do. It's the same thing that you would do if you were going to be intentional about working out and moving your body because you want to be healthy, right? You got to make sure you warm up your body. Your voice is a muscle, but it's actually not just a muscle. Your singing incorporates multiple muscles. So you need to be able to warm up your voice, not in a way that will be beneficial for you. So whatever you're doing. So for me, of course, as a professional singer, I might have a different warm up than what I would give my younger students for sure, but it's the same idea. You're going to start with something gentle and easy for your vocal cords because you just want to ease it in. And especially for speakers, I would say you probably don't need to do a super intense warm up, but even if you're about to go sing or speak somewhere or get on a Zoom call, it can literally just be doing some lip trills, right? Doing like trilling your lips,
Yeah.
or like some people do like lip or water bubbles. You can take your straw and your cup and you can like just blow bubbles into the
That's
water.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
like
then you
doing
do
that with
that and
how
you do
fun.
that and you just like slide up and down on different pitches, like ooh, like doing some slides. You can do that on lip trills. You could do that on water bubbles. You can do that on tongue trills, like rolling your R. Rolling your R. It's like so that's like a very easy way to just ease yourself into using your vocal cords without doing like a super intense warm up. That is just increasing blood flow to your vocalis muscles, to your which control your vocal cords, which are the muscle like underneath your vocal folds. And then you have like other muscles that you'll be using. You'll be increasing blood flow to them, and it's just a very easy way of starting to warm up your voice. And then from there, you can do other things like la 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 la, like like things that you
Yeah.
kind of hear a lot.
Right.
La
Because that
la
was
la
my vision of it when I
la,
heard it. I
yeah.
was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. I'm like,
Yeah,
la, la,
you can do
la,
some
la,
of
la.
that
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but really, I would say like, and even like humming is another easy way to ease your voice, just ease your vocal cords into movement. Before you do anything else, one of those like sliding up and down on an ooh, ooh, on a lip trill, on a tongue trill, blowing bubbles or humming. That's a great way to start. And then from there, you can do other exercise, other warm-ups as well. I would also suggest breathing techniques, just taking some low, slow, deep breath, relaxing your shoulders, expanding your stomach as you inhale, and as you exhale, engaging your abdomen. That's a really nice deep breathing technique that singers use. And so I think that's also a great one to add in there. But yeah, I have like vocal warm up exercise episodes that I do sometimes, but I think for speakers, it might not necessarily take as much as a singer might take, but I think it is super important. Yeah, I
Well, I
think it's
just
super
wonder,
important.
I think there's so much that's missed
Mm,
that would benefit speakers, podcasters,
mm,
managers before they go into a management meeting. Even I think of my past world, I was in HR and I would do open enrollment meetings, and you're talking to maybe 100 people about insurance and open
yeah.
enrollment and
Even teachers use their
teachers.
voices so
Yes.
much. Singing
Yes.
teachers included. Like I'm like
Yes.
by the end of the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been singing, I've been talking,
Yes.
I've been singing and talking. Like,
Yes.
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. So I love it. Well, thank you for letting me completely derail us a little
No,
bit
it's
on that, but
okay.
I love it. And I think it's actually great information for other people. Plus, I have noticed learning how to project my voice more, that after
Mm,
a while of heavy energy and projecting, my voice will, or my throat will kind of dry out. And then the tail end of everything starts to kind of
yeah.
bleed. I think that's what got me into looking into it more. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, wait a second. It just hit me when we were talking. She could probably tell us a lot about
Yeah.
that. And so I
Warming
think
up
it's
your voice
important.
beforehand. Yeah. Will
Yes.
help you ease into like the use of your voice so that you're not just all of a sudden talking and talking and talking for a long time without having given your voice that supportive like start. And then from there, continuing to drink water, staying hydrated, because your vocal cords can't hydrate themselves. So you have to,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's why you have to continue to drink water. You can't manually hydrate. Like you can wash your hands, right? You can see, but you can't really do that. When you drink water, your epiglottis closes so that the water doesn't get into your vocal cords. Otherwise, you choke. So you can't
Oh, yeah.
directly hydrate your vocal cords. So you have to drink water, not just like right before you have a meeting or right before you have a podcast, although that's great for like dry mouth and everything, but even beforehand, like
Mm.
continually hydrating your body is continually hydrating your vocal cords, especially in the wintertime, etc. So I could get
I
into all of this,
love
but
it.
yeah,
Well, you
little
bring up
vocal
a
health.
really great, and we'll kind of wrap it up because I know everybody's probably like, oh my gosh, so much. But
There's so much,
when
yeah.
you mentioned, well, there's several things you mentioned that I want to highlight real quick and then we'll wrap it up. You
Sure.
mentioned dressing the full part and practicing the full part. Well, of
Yes.
course, that's part of confidence as well. We all know that we have an outfit. Don't you have an outfit that just makes you feel like you can walk into any room and you
Yes.
feel magical? I mean, I have that in my head right now, what that outfit is. But I also, have outfits that I wouldn't want to walk out my front house. And I always think, I hope my house never burns down when I'm in that outfit because I wouldn't even want the firemen to see me. So, you know what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
matters how you dress, being hydrated ahead of time, practicing and understanding your voice
Yeah.
and having that power. So all of that. I mentioned all those things, but is there anything else that you'd like to share that is kind of what you would share to people when it comes to singing and how that ties into confidence or even just voice and voice care?
Mm.
What would you like to say to?
Yeah, there's so much that has to do with the voice, and that's why it's fascinating to me. And I just love learning more and more from every student, like everyone, you learn more. And I would say ultimately, because it always goes back to the heart, like I could give you all the practical tips and tricks and warm-ups and skills, but it goes back to what you believe. And I know that you talk about this on this show, and I know that your listeners have heard something along the lines of like knowing your why, knowing why do you want, what's your motivation, and being able to hold on to that. There's a reason why, actors do those types of exercises of like, what's their character's motivation? Because that's the reason that we do or don't take action in whatever direction. So if you know that you want to build confidence in yourself as a podcast host, as a coach, as a business owner, an entrepreneur, as a woman, you want to build confidence because you want to be an example to your children, right? Maybe that's the why. You want to build confidence in your voice because you want to be able to sing at your next family dinner or your next family event and not feel nervous, and not feel down on yourself. That's a good why. Like what is the why
Yes.
that you want to show up and use your whole voice with confidence, for? Is it because you want to make an impact in your next business meeting and you don't want them to, not hear what you're really wanting to say?
Yeah. Yes.
So hold on to that why and let that drive you. And I really want you to just know that whatever your field is, God has given you a voice for a reason. And I truly believe He's given all of us, He's made us all in His image, and He is the ultimate creator, which means that we all have the ability to be creative, and we can be creative using our voices. Using our voices to
Yes.
create ideas, to share ideas, to express ideas. And that can be through song and that can be through speech, and it's all worthwhile. So I want you to know your why, and I want you to know that you are creative with a voice that matters.
I
Yeah.
love that. A voice that matters. Oh, I love that. Gave me chills. Okay, well, I know there are plenty of people in my audience that are thinking, wait a second, I've never thought about singing, but now I'm in. So how would they be able to find you?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Heather. This has been so fun. Yeah, you can come to my podcast. It's where I like to hang out, kind of like Heather. The Sing Confidently Live Creatively podcast. Sing Confidently Live Creatively podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find it. And you can follow me on Instagram at Creatively by Estelle. And you can come check out my studio at creativelybystelle.com as well.
I love it. I'm so excited. And I will make sure to add all of your stuff in the description and the links.
Thank
And
you.
I have a feeling this is the beginning of a good connection because I'm like, ooh, I need to come to CSL. Like there's just so much.
Yes.
Your voice is so powerful. And
Mm,
so I just think it's a beautiful thing. And I love the work you're doing. So thank you
thank
for all the work that you're doing in the world. Thank you for
you.
joining us here at the Crazy Confidence Coach podcast today. And I have a feeling we'll see you again. So take care. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for hanging out at the Crazy Confidence Coach podcast today. It was episode 65. If you haven't already, please make sure to leave a rating or review. That's how people just like you find the podcast. And better yet, send it to a couple friends that you know might like it. We are here every week learning tips, tricks, and better ways to be the best version of ourselves and increase our confidence. You and I are the entire world. We all need confidence to make things that we want to do easier, more efficient, and definitely more fun. And don't forget to sign up for the Insiders Club on hcedwardscoaching.com. See you next Tuesday. Love you big.